Hello and good evening, Chicago. Welcome on in to another episode of Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio. I told you last week I had a feeling that this was going to be it, and sure enough, the Bears delivered. New general manager and new head coach, all locked and loaded and ready to go. Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus had their introductory press conference this morning. We will be talking about that, breaking that down. Did we really learn anything about either one of them today? Did the Bears really accomplish anything today? If you ask Ryan Poles, this might be the day that we remember as the day they became kings of the North. Certainly that of course, gets the fan base excited. How will the rest of us feel about it? For Matt Eberflus, of course, he comes in with his hits philosophy and other measurable things that he likes to talk about in coach speak. Does that really resonate with the players? Does that resonate with the fans? Should it resonate with either of those? We will be discussing that. The NFL has its Super Bowl matchup set. We will be talking about that. How close are the Bears to being either the Rams or the Bengals? Could the Bears be playing on Super Sunday sooner than we think? And finally, DeMar DeRozan made the All-Star team in the NBA and the Eastern Conference. We will talk a little bit of Bulls and check in on the Blackhawks tonight, too. All that and more coming up. This is Chi-Town Weekly on IE Sports Radio. Buckle it on up. Let's have some fun. And good evening, and once again, welcome on in to Chi-Town Weekly on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Very excited to be with you tonight on this Monday night, the final Monday in January 2022. My goodness, where has the time gone? I am your host, Adam Karnick. Thank you so much for taking time out of your night or your week, however you're listening to this, to talk sports with us here. I had a feeling last week, I said I had a feeling that the Bears were going to make a decision. There were some people that were a little nervous, a little rattled, starting to get uptight a little bit. Where the Bears, they still had a general manager vacancy. They still had a head coaching vacancy. Come on, we're past the divisional round of the playoffs. So something's got to happen, right? I said, everybody breathe, take a deep breath, calm down. I think they'll make a move. Sure enough, here a week later, we have a general manager. We have a head coach. We even have the beginnings of a staff with the team and some notable changes with the way things are done in the front office in Chicago. So we will be talking about those things, plus more, as we go on through tonight. But before we get too far into it, of course, we do need to acknowledge our sponsors here on IE Sports Radio, starting with the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organizations. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed, to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you've been waiting for as an athlete. Find them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, Instagram at Southern California_Warriors, or Facebook, search Southern California Warriors. And Background Check International. Businesses, are you looking to background check a new hire on? Let Kit Fremen take care of that for you. Kit founded and has managed Background Check International since 1994, and he's here to help you with the screening process. Contact Kit and let him help make the hiring process that much easier. This business is used for professional background checks and not for the use of any crimes such as identity theft or any other illegal activity. Go to their website, bcint.com, or find them on Facebook by searching Background Check International -BCI. And IE Sports Radio is available on all of the major social platforms. Search us at IE Sports Radio, whether that's Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. For the last 7.5 years, we at IE Sports Radio have been bringing you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans. And with your help, we are ready to take the next step. When you go to our website, I gave it to you earlier, iesportsradio.com, you'll see our Patreon link with 5 different tiers, the first one starting at just $5 a month. This donation gets you shout-outs on all 30 of our shows. Higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to our podcasting university, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment, with Larry B. Thank you all very much for continuing to make IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. And while you're there, too, you can also check out our Fan of the Month, Jim. He is a big Steelers fan. I'm sure he's a little depressed about the Ben Roethlisberger news that he's deciding to retire. But you can check out more about him. You can check out bios about all of our shows and some of our other personalities here on IE Sports Radio. This show is available to you on Twitter as well. You can find us here at IESRC. You can interact and have some fun with us back and forth on Twitter. Or you can follow me personally on Twitter. I am at Adam_Karnick. And if you are listening live here Monday night on Spreaker, you can hop on into the chat. Taryn is in there already. Good evening, Taryn. Taryn is coming up right after us with another episode of Set Point, checking in on all things volleyball around the country. I think I saw that he's going to be talking some Penn State volleyball later on in the show. And, of course, he's excited because he is also the host of our SoCal Supreme show, usually airing Friday afternoons, usually. So he is covering one of the 2 Super Bowl teams. So I know he has got a busy next couple of weeks lined up on SoCal Supreme. And I see Mike Pat jumped into the chat room. Good evening, Mike. Mike, I'm glad you're here because I'm actually going to be referencing one of your articles coming up here later in the show. Mike, as well as hosting our Let's Whine About Sports on Sunday nights, he also is in charge of the IE Sports Radio blog, and he just came out with a post here a couple of weeks ago looking at some of the offensive line help that will be available to a lot of teams this offseason. You definitely want to check that out because that is going to be something that the Bears, I'm sure, are going to be addressing this offseason. So, Eberflus and Poles had their introductory press conference this morning. I was a bit worried more about Eberflus than about Poles with their press conference because Eberflus, some of the things that I've read and seen, and when I've asked people about him, I asked Justin, the host of our High Octane Sports on Saturday mornings. He covers Indiana for us. He's a big Colts fan, and obviously Eberflus came over from Indianapolis. I talked with Justin a little bit about him, and one of the things is, what are we getting by getting this particular coach? What can we expect from him? And a lot of the answers I was getting felt very coachy. That I was worried that we were going to be getting a guy that's just going to be speaking in coaching platitudes all the time. And yes, Eberflus does have one big platitude there, his HITS principle, HITS, hustle, intensity, takeaways or turnovers, and being smart with the football. And he did emphasize that. He did bring that up in his opening press conference, but at the same time, he didn't go crazy with it. He didn't seem to go off the deep end with it. Worst case scenario in my head was I still have images of Jim Tomsula from the 49ers a few years back who just spoke in nothing but coaching platitudes, and you just went, oh my God, this is going to blow up so bad in their face. and it's not going to take long at all. And sure enough, it didn't. Tom Sula only lasted the one season in San Francisco, and that's what I was worried about when they went with Eberflus. But I didn't get that from listening to the press conference, watching the press conference, kind of judging. There were a lot of things, trying to create some first impressions there for both guys. Let's start with the process first. You flashback, gosh, what would it have been now? 3 weeks ago at least, maybe even 4 weeks ago, when they officially made the announcement that Nagy and Pace were gone. And George McCaskey has his press conference with Ted Phillips sitting next to him, and they absolutely bombed. They crashed and burned, and it was a horrible look for the Bears organization. Part of what I worried about initially was that they didn't learn anything from the last several times they've gone through this. I mean, for McCaskey now, Poles becomes the third general manager that has been there, while George McCaskey has basically been in charge of the team since 2010. And Eberflus becomes now the fifth head coach since McCaskey took over. And you felt like they just haven't learned anything from any of the prior times. That, okay, well, we go through our process. We find some old retired general manager who was good at it to give us a list of names that if all we did was just read the newspaper or listen to sports talk radio or watch Good Morning Football on the NFL Network, we know the list of names of people we need to be talking to, but instead we're going to spend $500,000 to get the list. And then we will go with whoever he says to hire for general manager, and then we'll browbeat that general manager into hiring the guy that the high-priced consultant says we should hire as the head coach, whether the general manager wants him to be that or not, and then we'll give that consultant a check. He'll wash his hands of it, and we'll wash our hands of the whole thing, and then in 4 or 5 years, we'll just repeat this process. And there were some elements of that this go around. Obviously, some of the names changed, but we've seen this play, but we've gone to this play before. You know, tonight in the role of Ernie Accorsi, you had Bill Polian this year. In the role of Ryan Pace, you have Ryan Poles. In the role of Matt Nagy or John Fox or ad nauseum, you just have Matt Eberflus. But there were differences. Big difference to me was one of the things that angered me the most from the George McCaskey press conference was he said he would ultimately be the one to decide, both the general manager and the coach, that both hires would be his. That bothered me. I have no problem with him making the general manager hire. That's your job. It's your team. The general manager is your top football executive, the way you have structured this franchise. So absolutely, that should be your hire, because he's going to report directly, for the first time ever, he's going to report directly to McCaskey. I didn't like that McCaskey said the head football coach would be his hire. Well, it turned out it wasn't. They brought in Ryan Poles, who he's only a year or two older than me, and when I saw that, it just was like, wow, what have I done wrong with my life? Why am I not running a football team here at 36 years old? But I digress. Instead, I get to be here with you talking about it. A lot less stress, I'll tell you that. But Poles came in and immediately took charge and said, no, this is my hire. I'm going to be the one to decide who the head football coach is. He has to report directly to me, therefore I'm making the hire. Not Bill Polian, not George McCaskey, certainly not Ted Phillips. This is going to be Ryan Poles' hire. And sure enough, the three finalists, Dan Quinn, Jim Caldwell, and Matt Eberflus, all sat down and had one-on-one private interviews with only Ryan Poles. I like that. Because Poles is the guy that has to live or die with this hire. So absolutely it should be his call to make. That was something that we've learned that with Ryan Pace that didn't happen. With Ryan Pace, ironically enough, wanted to hire Dan Quinn way back in 2014. And he was told by Accorsi and McCaskey that, well, that's fine. You know, it's your hire. It's your move to make. But we'd really like you to talk to John Fox first. Just talk with John Fox. You know, just talk with him. We think you'd really like him. And Pace took the hint and went ahead and hired the guy that they told him to hire against his own better judgment. Poles isn't making that same mistake. He went right out and he said, no, this is my guy. And in fact, Polian got ticked off that he got kicked out of the room, that he wasn't allowed to sit in on those interviews because Polian wanted Jim Caldwell. Polian had hired Jim Caldwell to be head coach for him with the Colts to replace Tony Dungy over a decade ago. And Polian wanted his buddy to get another shot at it. So Polian was upset that he didn't get to take part in it. Great. You know what? You're the consultant. Your job was to help compile the list. Your job is done. You compiled the list. See ya. Unless McCaskey wants to bring him in full time to be president of football operations, your job is done. So that didn't bother me in the slightest. And then we found out that McCaskey and Phillips reportedly, they wanted Dan Quinn. And they were surprised when ultimately Eberflus was the guy that Poles decided to hire. So a difference there. Another difference. Poles has brought in an assistant general manager. There has never been an assistant general manager in the history of the Bears franchise. Ian Cunningham comes over from the Eagles to be an assistant general manager. And when Poles was asked about it, he said, look, there's a lot that is on the plate of the general manager, and it's very easy for that person to get overwhelmed. So to have an assistant, somebody that I know I can hand something off to and it'll get done and it'll get taken care of, will help me do my job better. So there's already more professionalism, more structure, more big boy team, big boy corporation, however you want to look at it, that's going on with the team already, even though the process to get them there looked very similar. And then as far as once Eberflus came in, Eberflus has been in charge of picking out his staff. Poles will help and give names, but Eberflus is the guy that's got to work with them. And they've already got two excellent assistants that they've brought in. Alan Williams comes over along with Eberflus from the Colts. Williams is going to be the new defensive coordinator. And then Luke Getsy is going to be the new offensive coordinator. That's the one that for a lot of people, that's what they wanted to know. As soon as Eberflus, well, he's a defensive guy. What's that going to mean for the offense? What are they going to do with the offense? How are they going to fix the offense? Luke Getsy comes over from the Packers. He was the Packers quarterback coach. Now he gets to be the Bears offensive coordinator, and he'll be in charge of calling plays, something he never would have gotten to do in Green Bay because Matt LaFleur, even though he's not the offensive coordinator there, he's the play caller in Green Bay. So Luke Getsy comes down from Green Bay. Now he gets to run the show. He gets to work with Justin Fields. He gets to hone his craft a little bit. Absolutely, it's an opportunity for Getsy. I mean, if this works, absolutely Getsy's going to be a head coach then within the next 2 years. That I know that was a fear for a lot of Bears fans when they hired a defensive head coach. Oh my goodness, they're doing a defense. They've got a defensive head coach, but what happens then when Justin Fields takes off? You know, if Justin Fields takes off and the offense works, then you just lose the offensive coordinator because he's going to become a head coach somewhere else. That's a great problem to have, and I hope I sincerely hope that the Bears are faced with that problem by 2024. That by the year 2024, I hope that Luke Getsy is no longer offensive coordinator for the Bears because he got hired to be a head coach, preferably someplace in the AFC. And he showed that he could develop Fields and put an offense around him and have an elite enough group that he could go be a head coach someplace else. I hope and pray that that's a problem the Bears run into, because that's a first world problem. I can think of one time in my Bears fandom, which is 30 years old, that the Bears have lost an offensive coordinator to go be a head coach somewhere, and that was Adam Gase 5 or 6 years ago with the John Fox situation. And Gase proved to be a disaster of a head coach. Great offensive coordinator, not a great head coach, but that's beside the point. The point is he did well enough with Jay Cutler and the Bears offense that people took notice and said, hey, that's somebody we want to give a shot running our team. That's not something that normally happens with the Bears. Usually when Bears coaches leave the Bears staff, it's to go take a demotion with another team and prove that they can still coach in the NFL. So I'd love to have the problem of losing Getsy to go be a head coach someplace else, and let's see what the offense can do. But listening to the press conference for, of course, the quote that everybody's going to come away with from Ryan Poles is the quote about, we're going to take hold of the North and never let go. And if, in fact, the Bears win a title under Poles' leadership as GM, that's going to be the first thing they roll out in the hype tape. In the hype video is going to be that quote from Ryan Poles about grabbing hold of the NFC North and never letting go. A lot else of what he said is stuff that, yes, you want, and you want anybody to say those things, but they're not necessarily earth-shattering or life-changing quotes. You know, things like we're gonna be more measured with our analytics. He did comment that the Bears have a strong analytical front office already, and that they've got those tools. Let's continue to use them. But it's a lot of hey, we're going to evaluate. We're going to look at what's here. We're going to identify what holes there are, and we're going to try to fix them. He certainly seems confident. He certainly seemed like the stage wasn't too big for him. So, a good start from Poles. For Eberflus, the word that stuck out to me when I was listening to him was measurement. That he used measure or measuring or measurement constantly throughout the press conference. He kept coming back to that word, and especially with hustle and with his hits, his hustle, intensity, takeaways, and smarts. Obviously, takeaways and smarts, those are things that are easy to measure. You look at the turnover ratio. Are the Bears plus or minus on the turnover ratio? With smarts, how many penalties do they commit? What kind of penalties are they? Those are easy to measure. With hustle and intensity, those are a little harder to just, oh yeah, this is how that's measured. He outlined, though, in that press conference that, no, we have ways that we can measure it. And I was reminded Eberflus worked with Rod Marinelli, former Bears defensive coordinator in the Lovie Smith era. And in fact, there's some talk that he might bring Marinelli in to be part of his staff. Marinelli last served as defensive line coach for the Las Vegas Raiders. We'll see what happens with their coaching staff, with their coaching situation. Now that Josh McDaniels is the head coach there, we'll see how much of the staff he retains. If Marinelli doesn't stay in Vegas, he would be a welcome addition in Chicago. to come back as a defensive line coach. And when Marinelli was defensive coordinator here under Lovey, one of the ways they measured hustle and intensity was they would look at tape, and if you got passed on a play, meaning say you were a linebacker and you were running to make a tackle and you got passed by a defensive lineman, then you got dinged for your hustle because somebody who started from further away from the ball than you ran past you on their way to make a play at the ball. Or if you were in the secondary, if a linebacker passed you or a defensive line passed you. And I remembered a story, Charles Tillman telling a story of how the defensive guys all low-key hated Julius Peppers because Julius Peppers was just so damn fast that even the corners and the safeties were sometimes getting passed by Julius Peppers on his way to make a tackle, and they would just, dude, you're making us look bad. And he'd just laugh and, hey, there's the ball. I'm going to go get it. Eberflus is a student of Marinelli's. So it doesn't surprise me at all that when I don't doubt for a minute when he says that, yeah, we've got measurables for these kinds of things for the Bears players. And he told them, hey, get your track shoes on. They're gonna be doing a lot of running. And I don't think that just means in practice. I think that means with the team, with the offensive philosophy. That was one of the questions that came up because obviously while Eberflus is a defensive guy, what everybody wants to know, and obviously what's more broken with the Bears is their offense. Even though he's a defensive coach, he's got thoughts on how to fix the Bears offense. He's got thoughts and opinions on not just how to take care of the Bears defense, but how to take care of the Bears offense too, which is a big breath of fresh air compared to what we were getting from Matt Nagy. I want to dive in a little bit more onto those things, but first we need to take a break. On the flip side of that, we will talk more about Eberflus and what he and Poles, what some of their more specific visions for the team will be here in the next couple of years, and hopefully what they can do to have the Bears taking part in Championship Sunday and Super Sunday here in the near future. This is Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio. I am Adam Karnick, your host. We will be right back here in just a few minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, hear me and hear me good. If you like sports, then you like the Wait a Minute Show. If you like comedy, then you like the Wait a Minute Show. If you like a different opinion coming from a different angle, then you like the Wait a Minute Show.
So join me Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time
with your host, Jelani J.B. Bodie. And of course, my man Lopan
on the WaitAMinuteShow.com.
Ain't that right, Lopan?
Attention, all sports fans! If you're someone who wakes up each morning with a list of sporting events to go along with your to-do list for the day, then you just might be a diehard. The world of sports is as vast as the ocean is deep, including the major leagues, the minor leagues, the college, and everything in between. This is me, your boy Larry B of IE Sports Radio, welcoming you to join me every Monday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on The Defining Moment, a show that focuses on what really matters in the sports world, sports themselves, and nothing outside of them. Once again, tune in for The Defining Moment with me, your boy Larry B, every Monday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on IE Sports Radio, right here on Spreaker.com. We'll see you there.
What's up, sports fans? Are you looking for the latest on Northern California sports? Then take a trip out west with me, your host, Gina G, on Reppin' to NorCal Sports, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'll be bringing it to you all the way live every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's always a packed show. I'll bring you everything Dynastic 49ers, the bite of the San Jose Sharks, torture of the San Francisco Giants, the Golden State Warriors that we still believe. Then take you across the bay to the rise and grind of the Oakland A's. I've got you covered on college ball from the Cal Bears to the Stanford Cardinal, so that no matter what, reppin' in NorCal Sports is always reppin' the Bay. So if you bleed red and gold, or you're looking to keep an eye out west in them thar hills, don't miss me, Gina G, on reppin' in NorCal Sports. Catch me every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and I'll have your fandom repped harder than a trio of defenders guarding Stephen Curry before his buzzer beater is Gucci.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Everybody, this is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunderous Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio. I am your host, Adam Karnick. All right, let's dive into some of the specifics here, some of the more specific things from Eberflus and polls. One of the takeaways offensively that Eberflus mentioned in the press conference is the priority of having speed and intensity. Intensity, of course, being the I in his HITS acronym. But also he talked about wanting to get chunk plays. That not just being content to march down the field, but to pick up 20, 30, 40 yards of offense in one play. And then defensively also stopping chunk plays from happening. One of the fears, I think, when you bring in a defensive coach is that it's just going to be protect the ball, protect the ball, protect the ball, protect the ball at all costs. That was one of the flaws with Lovie Smith, was it was all about playing great defense, playing great special teams, and then just make sure the offense doesn't muck things up. I don't think we're going to see that with Eberflus, at least from this first press conference. He talks about wanting to get chunk plays on offense. That means putting the ball in the air. That means taking risks, means taking chances. Still being smart with the ball, but taking calculated shots down the field. I don't think we're just going to see 3 yards in a cloud of dust from this offense, much as there are certain segments of Bears fans that would love to see that kind of offense. And they talked about, too, wanting to understand their players' strengths and their weaknesses and working on highlighting the strengths. Figure out what your players do well and design plays and design schemes built around highlighting those strengths. Obviously, work on minimizing the weaknesses. Work on fixing, as Poles put it at one point, filling the holes with the players. But at the same time, not asking them to do things that they're not necessarily great at doing. That was one of the big problems with Matt Nagy, was he was so rigid that it was this is my offense, this is the way it's got to be, this is the way we've got to fix it. And this is the way it's got to be executed. With Eberflus, you're already getting a sense that he's not going to be as rigid, that it's going to be, let's look at what our players do, let's look at what my players do well, and let's play to their strengths. And certainly with Justin Fields having a strong arm, he'll be able to hit chunk plays. He will be able to get the ball down the field and hit on some chunk plays. I see Brad Buckingham jumped into the chat. Brad hosts Northwest Sports for us on Sundays, talking things Seattle and up into Washington and Portland, Oregon, and things like that. So apologies for beating your Trailblazers yesterday, Brett. Well, not really. The Bulls needed the win in the worst way. So thank you, Trailblazers, for being there, for allowing the Bulls to get the win, first of all. But then Brad wants to know about Sean Desai, because Sean Desai has interviewed with Seattle to be the new defensive coordinator. He is not going to be coming back to Chicago. The Bears have filled that role. Alan Williams is going to be taking over as defensive coordinator. Sean Desai, he's a very smart guy. He's very bright. He's actually got a doctorate. Oh, the Trailblazers stink, so it's all good. Well, then wonderful timing on the part of the schedule makers, because the Bulls need some of that in their opponents. They lost to San Antonio last week. The Bulls need some help. Being down Lonzo Ball and Zach LaVine for a while, and God, seemingly everyone on the roster catching COVID at the same time, the Bulls could use some help. So thank you, Trailblazers, for being at least a one-night antidote, at least. It's much appreciated. Sean Desai is very smart. He's a very bright, very intelligent guy. He's very young, too. He actually was a holdover for a couple of regimes. He originally came over, I believe, in the John Fox era, with the Bears, stayed on when Nagy came on and replaced him, and then even when Fangio left to go become head coach out in Denver, Desai stayed behind and kept having more responsibility given to him, and he kept exceeding expectations with it. He's a good defensive coordinator. Obviously, the Bears' defense ultimately ran into some problems last season. Losing Khalil Mack for over half the year, that's going to affect anybody's defense. I don't care how good you are. When you lose a player of Mack's caliber for that amount of time, your defense is going to suffer. It'd be interesting to see. I would imagine Desai would probably look at having the Seahawks, wherever he winds up, if he's a defensive coordinator. It'd be interesting to see, does he look at converting that defense into a 3-4? Because that's what he has been with for so long in Chicago. But overall, I like Desai. He's a good defensive coordinator. Very, very smart, very intelligent, schemes things up well, works well with players. He was not a problem on a coaching staff filled with problems this past year for the Bears. Oh, good. I see Larry's jumped into the chat. Larry, because I need your perspective on this, and I want to get back to Eberflus here using his HITS principle. Again, an acronym that he's come up with along with other coaches for hustle, intensity, takeaways, and smarts. HITS. When a player hears a coach, hey, we've got this acronym, and this is the kind of team we're going to be. We're gonna have hustle. That's the H. We're gonna have intensity. That's the I. We're gonna take away the ball on defense, and we're gonna prevent turnovers on offense. That's gonna be the T. And we're gonna have smarts. That's gonna be the S. How does a player react to that? Because as a fan, I hear that, and I have to stop myself from rolling my eyes and going, oh, God, corporate speak. Just say you want to be good at football. Why do you have to have this acronym and rah-rah speech about it? How does a player react to that? So, Larry, I'm glad you're here. Give me kind of a player's perspective on that. And again, I want to emphasize that Eberflus, he did not come off as preachy coach when he talked about it. He came off intelligently with it. So I did not roll my eyes when I heard it. It also helped that I knew it was coming. But for the Bears defense, Eberflus is going to convert them back to a 4-3 front. The first thought I had was, oh man, did Khalil Mack, did he play in a 40 front with the Raiders, or were they running a 3-4 base defense out there? I reached out to our good friend and colleague Phil Jones, who covers the Raiders. I reached out to him, and he reminded me that no, the Raiders ran a 40 front, four defensive linemen when Mack was out there. So okay, so Mack's used to that. Robert Quinn has said he prefers that. And Larry saying that there's millions of acronyms. He's heard all of them in his days as a player. How do you react to those, Larry? When a player hears those, does a player roll his eyes, or does a player buy in? And I guess, does it depend on how the message is delivered too? Give me some give me some insight on that, Larry. So I was a little worried about what does this mean for Mack and Quinn. I knew Quinn would be very comfortable playing in a 4-3 defense, because that's when the Bears signed him. He even said, I kind of prefer playing as a down lineman on a 4-3 defense than playing as an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. But Mack fits in just so beautifully as an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. I wondered what would that do for him playing in a 43 defense. But he's done it before and had huge success with the Raiders. So I'm not concerned there. It does mean there are going to be changes, that there are going to be things, there are going to be players that are going to be out. And it does bring in a whole new list of offseason needs. I'm planning on doing a write-up here in the next week or two. I'm sure for our blog. I'm sure Mike's ears just perked up when I said that. I am planning on doing kind of an offseason needs write-up. And now that we know that the Bears are going to be in a 4-3 defense, that does change some of the things they'll be looking at. The kind of lineman you have in a 4-3 defense is a lot different than the kind of lineman you have in a 3-4. You know, you're looking at guys that are looking to shoot the gap rather than taking an offensive lineman head on when they're attacking. So I wonder, you know, for somebody like Eddie Goldman is an excellent nose tackle or nose guard in a 3-4, being the exact middle of the defensive line. And now Larry's giving me a list of acronyms he heard. Oh man, okay. Art, alignment, responsibility, and technique. Win, what's important now. Oh man, I can hear especially win. I can hear a coach using win. Oh, you gotta win. We gotta be doing what's important now. You gotta, Belmonte's win. Oh, I can hear that one. Oh man, it doesn't help that the Illini had a coach a few years back who came up with WINT, whatever is necessary today. You know, that's a special kind of coachy preachy there, where not only are you making up an acronym, you're making up your own word to be the acronym. That's a special kind there. Okay, and Larry is coming at it from the perspective of just give me the playbook and let's talk about how to fix the game. You don't need okay. So for Larry, you're definitely one that's not necessarily needing the rah-rah. Okay. Because that's where I come at it from it a little bit too, is I don't need the preachy, cutesy name for it. I just tell me whatever I need to wind up with the scoreboard being in our favor at the end of the week. We'll have to start fitting some of these acronyms into the show. I like it. Keep them coming, Larry. Keep them coming. Now I got to remember where I was with this train of thought. Oh, but for the Bears now, defensive line, I think now gets added into the prior. You've got some defensive needs that you might not have had you stuck with a 3-4 defense. And I'm not saying that that's automatically a bad thing. I mean, the Bears were going to need to make some improvements on the defense anyway. Danny Trevathan at middle linebacker, he was probably going to need to be replaced anyway, even if they stayed with a 3-4 defense. You're certainly going to need to replace him now. Roquan Smith, where does Roquan Smith wind up? That's going to be key for the linebacking crew. Where does Roquan line up? He's got, because this defense that they're going to be playing, and I should back up, it's not just a 4-3 defense that they're going to be switching to. Bears fans are going to find this a very familiar defense. Eberflus runs his variation and his version of the Tampa 2, the same defensive scheme that Lovie Smith used for his whole tenure with the Bears, that Rod Marinelli ran when he was here with the team, that Marinelli then used when he left and coached in Dallas and other places. That Tony Dungy used in Tampa Bay and then later brought with him when he went to Indy. So this is going to be a very familiar looking defense. When the Bears drafted Roquan Smith, the thinking was, oh man, you know, I'll back up. When I've been talking with Bears fans off and on about this. There is feeling that Roquan Smith could absolutely play the middle linebacker, play that Brian Urlacher role of drop back, cover the deep middle. I wonder, though, I felt like when they drafted him, and I've had other people agree with me on this, that, God, he looks so much like Lance Briggs, and he plays like Lance Briggs. I wouldn't be surprised if Roquan Smith winds up playing the weak side, the will linebacker, as he sometimes gets called, because of all the opportunities he'll get to make plays on the ball, that he'll get to crash downfield and make plays on the running back in the running game, or hit the slot receiver or the tight end coming over the middle. But they don't have a Brian Urlacher. They're going to need a middle linebacker who can basically play safety. They're going to need their Tommy Harris. I like Eddie Goldman. He's not a Tommy Harris kind of defensive lineman. Eddie Goldman is a great nose guard, nose tackle in a 3-4 front, but if you ask him to, a guy whose job is to hold the line, demand a double team, and just the line doesn't move, and the running back can't find a lane coming up the middle. But if you're asking him to cut in between the guard and the center and go make a play in the backfield, that's not Eddie's game. That's not his style. It's not that he necessarily couldn't do it, but it's not playing to his strength. So switching to a Tampa 2 defense, which it sounds like that's what the Bears are going to do, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with some of the guys already there. For the secondary, that was a hole already. That was a hole already for the team. Eddie Jackson, I wouldn't be surprised if Eddie Jackson winds up with a lot more bench time here in the near future than he has in time past. But if they can get him right, man, he could be a terrific safety in a Tampa 2. Guys that could just, with a nose for the ball, take the ball away. But you've got to be disciplined. You've got to be disciplined playing safety in a cover 2 scheme. Because, man, if you're out of position, that corner is relying on you to be there. Otherwise, you get burned, and you get burned bad. We've seen that before watching a Tampa 2. So Eddie Jackson, suddenly, he's got to grow up fast. We'll see what they can do. But there are some scheme things there that they've already started to put in place. But yeah, and Mike brings up in the chat that teams can use a bigger nose tackle in a 4-3 scheme, but it's a lot more reduced role. Yeah, it's instead of being the 3 technique, you wind up being the over tackle, where it's you wind up playing like the Keith Traylor role if you want to go way back. Big Keith Traylor, look at him rumble. God, I will never forget that play. We're running out of time. Otherwise, next week I am planning on telling my Bears Super Bowl story, because we're coming up on 15 years since the Bears were last in the Super Bowl, and I realized I've never really told that story, my story of the Bears being in the Super Bowl on the air. I'm planning that for next week. Another Bears story, more fun Bears story, is the Keith Traylor interception that we just had the 20-year anniversary of here a few weeks back. But yeah, you can use a bigger nose tackle. But, yeah, it's a very different role than what you're used to from Eddie Goldman. So it'll be interesting to see what the Bears do with some of those defensive things. Offensive things, my God, you've got to get weapons. I mean, you look at the Bengals. The Bengals have made it to the Super Bowl. But, gosh, we've gone through, my goodness, we're 55 minutes into the show, and I'm just now mentioning the Super Bowl as to who's in it. The Bengals have made it to the Super Bowl with a subpar offensive line. Now, it might be their undoing in the Super Bowl, and we'll talk more about this next week. It might be their undoing in the Super Bowl, but they at least got to the Super Bowl with a subpar offensive line, but in part because they just have an amazing wide receiving core. The Bears don't have anything in the way of wide receivers. To me, that's still the number one priority for this offseason is, my God, you've got to get some weapons for Justin Fields. And Poles and Eberflus have both said, yes, Fields, we want to build this offense around what our quarterback can do. At first, Eberflus didn't quite commit to that. He was asked to evaluate Fields and did he think Fields was a franchise quarterback, and he didn't want to commit to that. But then he was asked to, well, is Fields the guy going forward? And he was, oh yes. Fields is the guy going forward, certainly for next season. So they're going to try to cater this offense to him, get him some weapons, get him some people to throw to. And Mike is telling me that Eddie Goldman did play a more traditional defensive tackle role at FSU. So he has done it, but he's so good as he's so good as a nose tackle in a 3-4. I wouldn't be surprised. The Bears need draft picks. I wouldn't be surprised if Eddie Goldman winds up being somebody that they dangle and see if you can't get a 5th or 6th round pick for him. And yes, I agree, Larry. The moral of today's show, don't use acronyms to try and get a point across. Just say what it is you want to say. I agree wholeheartedly with that. We don't need to use WINT. We don't need to use ART. We don't need to use hits. Use hits in the, hey, Roquan, see that ball carrier? Go hit him. That's what hits means. How many times do we smack somebody? That's what I want hits to mean. I don't need it to be an acronym for how the whole team plays. That is going to do it for our show. We are to the end. Congratulations to DeMar DeRozan for making it to the All-Star team from the Chicago Bulls. He is the Bulls representative on the Eastern Conference team. Congratulations to him. The Bulls, again, they beat the Trailblazers last night. Congratulations on that win. Congratulations to the Chicago Sky. Bring back Kalea Copper. I saw Annalie Costabile tweet that earlier today, so there are some pieces from the Sky's championship team coming back. The Blackhawks announced they're making some moves looking at actually hiring a general manager. Something that they have not had since parting ways with Bowman after the Kyle Beach debacle and that whole thing. I'm still not over that. Coming up next here on IE Sports Radio, we've got Taryn Rodriguez in Set Point. He will get all of your volleyball news and stats, get you up to date on all that with everything going on there. Thank you to our sponsors, the Southern California Warriors and Background Check International, for continuing to sponsor not just this show, but every show here on the network. We really do appreciate it. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you to Larry and Taryn and Mike and Brad for hanging out with us tonight. Larry, thank you for everything you do in keeping this organization up and running and keeping the lights on and everybody up on their toes and knowing what's what. And thank you for all of the acronyms. I am definitely going to figure out ways to mix those in now from time to time just to see who does what. Finally, thank you for listening. Without your support as listeners, really this would not be possible. But again, check out our Patreon page for IE Sports Radio. You get a chance to have your own featured segment with Larry B on The Defining Moment. Thank you to MLOS Great and Bay Area Raised for supporting us on Patreon. Thank you for coming back and continuing to listen to this show each and every week. I really do appreciate it. Up next, Taryn Rodriguez with Set Point. Be sure to stick around for him. Next week, we will have all kinds of Super Bowl talk. I am Adam Karnick signing off. We will see you next week.